One of my favorite passages of Scripture is the 139th Psalm. David's talking about his relationship with God and the fact that God is there in the darkest night, in the most glorious of sunrises. God's in the middle of all of that. In the almost the middle of that psalm, he says, "I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Isn't that an interesting phrase, that God intentionally, with great design, very carefully created us to work in just a certain way? And there are times I just have to sit back and just admire the fact that God made people the way that he did. The problem is that when body, mind, soul relationship doesn't work exactly like we think it should, it can be frustrating, it can be confusing, it can create shame, it can create all kinds of disconnect in us. Why do I overreact in certain situations? Why do I shut down emotionally sometimes? Why do I feel anxious when there's really, I can't see anything that's really wrong? Why do I struggle to stay calm and so often get upset? And these are just questions I ask my wife, by the way. So what about all that God created us a certain way? Well, what if we found out that maybe it's not just you, maybe it's not just an emotional thing, but there's some biology going on, that your nervous system is responding a certain way, getting overwhelmed by some of the things that are going on in life. We're going to talk today about something called polyvagal theory. Now, hold on, I know this sounds like science class, but it's just fascinating to understand that God created us and made us in such a way that things can happen in us and to us, sometimes some of the trauma of life, that can cause our nervous system to become dysregulated. There's an awful lot of relief when we recognize that there's something like that going on. The title of this is The Polyvagal Theory and Jesus. It's going to be a fun conversation.
Welcome to Extending Branches, a mental health podcast committed to helping people recover hope, find healing, and experience growth. Extending Branches is a twice-monthly podcast from Branches, a nonprofit dedicated to compassionate mental and emotional health care rooted in Christ-centered values. Your host is Dr. Mike Courtney, founder of Branches. He is an author, speaker, and pastoral counselor who leads honest conversations about faith, emotional health, and real-life growth. Before we jump in, a quick but important note. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a replacement for professional counseling. If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts or facing a mental health crisis, please reach out to a licensed professional or seek immediate help in your area. If you want to learn more about Branches or explore support options, you can visit branches.org. We're really glad you're here. Welcome to Extending Branches.
My guest is Madison Grissom. Madison is one of our counselors. She is an associate marriage and family therapist. She oversees our office in Nashville. And she and her husband, Andrew, have just moved to Murfreesboro, so they're part of the traffic problem here in town. And the best news of all, Madison is expecting their first baby, and it's going to be just a Branches baby. Madison, thanks for being a part of this today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I have no idea what a Branches baby means, but it's
Me neither. We'll figure it out.
going to be roaming the halls, and
A little mascot.
We'll all take turns changing diapers, that kind
Perfect.
of thing. You're going to have a boy, and you
Yes.
can say that.
Baby boy in
That's
August.
neat.
We're excited.
Yeah. Madison, you taught us at one of our staff meetings, maybe a year or two ago. You taught us, you had just come back from this training on polyvagal theory. And it was fascinating. I remember taking notes about it. I remember being enthused about it. I wanted to have you as a part of our podcast. I never did learn how to spell it, but I remember that. Let's just start at the very beginning, kind of in plain language.
Yeah.
What is polyvagal theory?
Yeah. Polyvagal theory is a fancy science word for basically just understanding our nervous system and how
Okay.
it functions. We're all born with a nervous system, and it's this really cool thing that I've find God created in us to help us connect with other people, but to also help us remain safe and move away from things that make us feel unsafe. And so our nervous system is this thing within us that's always aware of what's going on within our own bodies, between us and other people, in our environment, and it's on 24/7. And it's something that we don't have a lot of awareness of unless we start to kind of learn the language of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that happen?
Yeah.
How does it work? How does that help me to know how I experience God, or how I am in relationship, or even how I see myself? How does the nervous system play a part in all of that?
For sure. So in our nervous system, we have three main states. If you want to imagine a ladder, that's sometimes an easy way to kind of visualize it. But on this ladder, we all have the top state of that ladder, which is called ventral vagal. And that's another fancy word for just safety and connection. So safety and connection is probably what we're experiencing right now, just talking, connecting with other people, feeling safe, knowing there's not any real dangers going on. And this is where we really want to build our home. But we live in a fallen world, right? And there's evil, and there's toxic relationships, and we all come from, areas of brokenness. And so our nervous systems had to learn how to meet our needs. And so we all have two other states that are more so survival states.
Yeah.
And so if we're going down that ladder, whenever a threat is present, whenever our nervous system, that thing that's surveying the environment, our bodies, us and other people 24/7, whenever it detects that there's danger, it starts to alert our body that we got to be ready for that danger, right? And so it gives us all of those stress hormones, the adrenaline, the cortisol, and we enter what's called our sympathetic state.
Okay.
And the sympathetic state of our nervous system is about mobilization. It's about, you hear the word fight or flight. That's where that lives. Which can be helpful if we have a threat that we need to be prepared for, right? Like if we're in Bible times and we're David and we're trying to spear the lion, we would hope that our sympathetic nervous system would help us to do those things. But when those threats are not present, or when our nervous system is detecting that there's danger and there's not, that's when we can get kind of stuck. And then the bottom state of that ladder is called dorsal vagal, and that's more of shutdown, collapse. It's a slowing down of our nervous system. So when that sympathetic state becomes too much, that's a lot for our bodies to handle, we can't sustain that for long periods of time, we enter what's called dorsal vagal, which is more of a shutdown state.
Okay.
And so this helps our bodies preserve energy. Like if you're sick or ill, you can think about like, it's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to have the energy or the motivation to do much of anything because we're in that dorsal vagal state where our body is holding on to as much energy as it can to help us heal. And so, but again, we don't want to get stuck there, right?
Right.
And
so from a physical standpoint, when trauma occurs, sometimes we'll go into, we go into shock, where the body is pulling the blood and warmth back into the core to protect the core. It sounds like it's kind of that. The body is kind of getting everything, circling the wagons around what really needs to be circled.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's beautiful about the way God designed us is he knew there would be trouble. He knew there would be things we would face that are really hard, and he designed our bodies in a way that responds to that, right?
Yeah.
But again, kind of what you were talking about earlier, when we get stuck in those states, or when we don't have a good blueprint for what safety looks like, because the goal is to not just feel safe and calm and zen all the time. That's not realistic. And so we want, if you're imagining that ladder, we want a nervous system that can be resilient and go up and down that ladder depending on what we need for that day. And so, but when we don't have, even if we have the most well-intentioned parents, we still may not get that blueprint for safety and connection. And we may struggle to know what that feels like. And when we do feel that sense of safety or connection, that ventral vagal state, if that feels really unfamiliar, it can actually feel dangerous. Because we don't have the map for that.
One of the things that comes to my mind is that we probably either saw our parents constantly up and down the ladder in great extremes, or we heard, just be calm, don't get upset, keep a level head. And we heard that they didn't mean it, but we heard that it's not appropriate to go up and down the ladder. You need to get to the calm state and just stay there all the time. So that's hard to take that and then begin to put it into practice in a world that doesn't look that way.
Yeah, and in a world that doesn't necessarily support that, right? We're kind of going against the cultural tide, if you will. And I think the goal is to, when we're talking about building awareness of our nervous system and how does that impact like faith and our relationship with God, it's so important that as we raise awareness, we get awareness around the fact that each of those states has a different story. So
that's good.
the same thing could happen, right? Like say someone bumps into me at the grocery store with their grocery cart. If I'm in a ventral vagal place of knowing I'm safe and that I'm okay, that's not going to bother me very much. But if I'm in my sympathetic state where I'm already really maybe hyperactive or overstimulated or anxious, and that happens, then that's going to shock my nervous system a lot more. If I'm in dorsal vagal, I may have thoughts about, no one ever sees me, right? I can jump there so quickly.
Immediately go to shame and worthlessness and all that.
Yes.
So, road rage. I never heard of road rage until the last 10 or 15 years, but that is that over hyper response to something, probably because of a part of the story of someone being in a sympathetic state longer than they needed to.
Absolutely. If you're in sympathetic and someone slams on their brakes in front of you, that's going to be a lot more frustrating than if you were in your place of safety and connection.
Yeah. One more thing, a question about this, without confusing it too much. But I'm thinking that God created us with these different states, with originally the idea that there would be bears to fight or lions to spear or giants to battle.
Yes.
And now those things are on my keyboard or in the highway. It's not appropriate.
Exactly.
There's still times I want to pick up rocks and throw at people, but that's not appropriate.
Yes.
So what do we do with all of that adrenaline and energy when there's no physical place to?
I love that question because you're right. Like we need places to put this energy when we're in our different states, right? And that used to be a productive thing. We could expel that when we're running away from enemies or fighting things, but now we're
or even just working hard on the farm.
Exactly.
We're digging ditches and stuff. Now we're not.
Now we don't have as many places to put that energy. So we wonder why we're so anxious and why we're so depressed. Well, we don't have the same outlets culturally that we used to have to expel some of that energy in our nervous system. And so, but I think we can gain a lot of insight when we tune into what is my body telling me, right? Like when we're feeling anxious, most people feel a little shaky. Like your body is telling you it needs to move. Like your body's starting to do that kind of on its own without even your awareness. And everyone's nervous system is different because it's shaped by our past experiences. Right. So, your nervous system is going to be regulated by different things than mine and vice versa. But tuning into what is my body telling me it needs right now? And that's something that takes a lot of practice. And we're often so disconnected from our head and our body. So this is a pathway that takes a long time to build. But tuning into what is my body telling me I need in these different states. Like for myself, I know when I'm in sympathetic, I do need to move. Like there's a lot of energy going on in my body. And if I'm just going to try to sit here and be still, it's not going to work.
Right.
My thoughts aren't necessarily going to shift. But if I can get up and go on a walk, I find that naturally starts to regulate some of that. Or if I'm in dorsal vagal, I actually need something that's a little activating. Yeah. Like I might need to run my hands under some cold water, or I might need to listen to music, something that helps connect me back to something outside of myself. And so just really getting attuned to your body and what it needs in those moments is what eventually helps bring us back to that place of safety and connection.
So I use a phrase a lot. I think I took it from Joyce Myers, but I use a phrase a lot with people that you need to think about what you think about, that you need to be aware of what's going on in your head and pay attention to that rather than just and what you're saying is you need to think about what you feel about too. You need to think about what's happening in your body and what you're feeling, where does that come from and how you respond to that. Absolutely. Wow, that's powerful. I don't mean for this to be a shameless plug, but one of the drives of branches is that it be a place where we minister to body, soul, and spirit, the whole person. And this seems like it's really a place where you're taking your counseling training, what we would normally think of to behavioral training, and now applying it to biology, to how does this work?
Yeah.
So how connect those two things? How does that begin to impact me when I am, I think dysregulated is a word. When I'm dysregulated, that it can create shame or worthlessness. Is it just, I feel like there must be something wrong with me? How does that?
I love the phrase connection before correction, right?
Oh,
And
good.
so
Yeah.
if we think about wanting to change thoughts that we're having of
Yeah.
I'm so bad or I'm so wrong, we can, try to replace those thoughts. That's not a bad thing to do, but I think something that may be more effective for people is trying to change your body's response to what's going on and then allowing that to change your thoughts.
Yeah.
It's called the bottom-up approach. And
Yeah.
so it's based on this idea that we all have a vagus nerve. Have you heard of the vagus nerve
Yeah.
before? It's the longest nerve in your body that connects your brain to all your essential organs. And what's interesting about the vagus nerve is that 80% of the information that travels that really long road from your brain to your body is actually coming from your body, your nervous system, to your brain. And so when we're just trying to change our thoughts, that's only 20% of that path, right?
Yeah.
And so we're kind of fighting against things our body is feeling and telling us, and we're trying to get that down to help ourselves feel calm, but it doesn't always work, especially for nervous systems that are chronically dysregulated and have been shaped by traumatic experiences. So we really want to start with the body a lot of times and see if we can calm the body down and, be aware of what state we're in and what we need in order to shift that a little bit. And then that can be much easier to change our thoughts from that place rather than fighting against the thought.
Yeah, that's good. So we talk about something called cognitive behavioral therapy, where basically we tell people, change your thinking. Don't think about that anymore. Just change your thinking, which is good and true, and that works, except when it doesn't.
Yes.
And when it doesn't, it may be that there's something in the very core of us, in that vagus nerve, that's not allowing us to do that.
Yes.
So get that
Yes.
in a good state before we start. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's all we got time for. Thanks for talking to us. No. So what do we do with that? How do I begin to recognize what's going on in me to make that helpful for me?
So a place I like to start with clients a lot of times is creating a map. So I'll actually draw out that ladder that we're talking about, and we'll get really familiar with what each of those states feel like in our bodies and how they change how we perceive what's going on in the world. Because again, our nervous systems are different. So the way my nervous system experiences the world is different than how my clients do. So we want to...
So you might just say, okay, when you're feeling this or when you're experiencing this, heavy traffic on I-24 and late for work and all that, tell me what's going on inside of you to identify what state you're in. Is that right?
Yep. And we want to build that language and that awareness of what that feels like so that when it happens, and then when we know what state we're in, we know what we need. Because so often when we're in states of dysregulation, it's what do you need? I have no idea. I have no clue how to help myself. And so this helps put us in the driver's seat of what's going on in our nervous system so that when that happens, we have tools. And so I'll often build a map just to help clients get awareness around what state that they're in, but we'll also build another map about what resources do you need, because it's going to be different depending on which state you're in. And the goal is always that we're moving back towards, that ventral vagal safety and connection. We're not meant to live there, but when we're there, that's when we experience God, right?
Yeah,
that's when we
that's at least the goal to keep moving toward that.
We experience connection with other people, all these good things that people
So Paul says, I'm being changed from glory to glory, ever increasing glory. I'm getting closer to that vagal state. Probably never fully arrived, but I'm getting close to that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So it definitely impacts, if it impacts everything, it impacts how we see God, it impacts how we see other people. And so if he's calling us to do these things, or he's calling us into relationship with himself, but we're stuck in survival states, it can be really difficult to access that. And so having the right awareness and tools can help us get there more effectively.
Yeah, that's good. So are there some things that you've taught me the language, I have a fairly good idea where I am. You mentioned earlier just running your hands under cold water. Are there some things that I can do to help me kind of get back on track, to get regulated?
Yeah. One thing I encourage people to do is, we talk a lot about triggers, right? Things that send us into survival states. We all also have glimmers. Glimmers are things that help us get back into safety and connection. And so, and glimmers don't necessarily mean I'm happy and joyful at a 10 out of 10. It means I feel okay. I feel okay enough in the world. And so when we get a good idea of what our glimmers are, these things that pull us back into a feeling of okayness, we can even outside of those moments. Like mine is, I love when the light is like coming through the trees. That's a beautiful moment. Just makes me take a deep breath for a second.
Yeah.
Even if I can't access that, even if we're in a room with no windows like we are right now, I can think about those times, and my nervous system can actually respond to that. And so it's the same way when you're talking with someone and you're talking about old memories or things that make you happy, and you start to feel happy, right? Your nervous system starts to respond to that and feel safe and connected, versus when you're talking about really hard things,
right,
where someone is talking about, their trauma, then your nervous system starts to kind of respond to that as well. And so we can use that to even out if we can't access those glimmer moments. We can use that to pull us back into safety. Even in moments where we feel like we can't control a lot.
Yeah. So I can either literally recreate those glimmer moments, go for a walk, pull out a photo album and go through them, literally do that. Or I can cognitively just put myself in a state, think about some of those. This is a little bit of an exaggeration, but I can talk an hour about great baseball plays that my grandson made. And I can stop. I literally can see that. I can smell the dust on the field, all that.
Exactly.
So, that's
I
good.
love that you're bringing in the senses, because the senses help ground us, right? So like thinking about these glimmers and what did my eyes see? What did my ears hear? What did my hands feel? And that really brings us back into those moments in a really neat way.
Yeah,
so using those glimmers.
I do have some news for you. You have no idea what your triggers or your glimmers are until this baby comes. This going to be...
I'm sure you're right.
You're going to have glimmers in whole different places. That's neat. I appreciate, Madison. One more thing. Excuse me. One more thing. And you've talked about it. You've alluded to it. But I called this the Polyvagal theory in Jesus. What about Jesus? I mean, Jesus is a glimmer. But more than that, how does that walk with God, that relationship? How does that re-regulate me?
Absolutely. Well, Jesus was the author of co-regulation. He created us to need one another and to need him. We're created as dependent beings, and no one's nervous system can regulate itself fully on its own. And so I think this really draws us into a beautiful dependency on him, and the fact that we have a hope that we're going to fully be in ventral vagal for all of eternity one day. We're going to be so safe and so connected, and we can get moments of that with him here on earth. And so he's constantly inviting us back into that. He calls himself our refuge and our home. And he uses the same kind of language of like safety and invitation into relationship. And so when we can respond to that, and when our bodies can experience that in a real way, because the Holy Spirit is alive and living, and we can sense that a lot of times. And so when we experience these moments of co-regulation with him, it just creates this beautiful bond that is part of his design.
That's good. That's good. I long for that. It's funny, even as you describe it, I can feel myself being drawn toward that.
Exactly.
That kind of safe place regulation with him.
That's your nervous system, just knowing what it desires and where it belongs. And
Thank you, Madison. It's been fun having you do this. Thanks a lot.
Of course.
We kind of had to hurry and get you in before the baby comes, and then we'll get you in again once the baby's here. So
the Branches baby can join us next time.
Maybe you'll just have one of you and the baby both. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
Mike.
We are fearfully and wonderfully made. We can get dysregulated. We move up and down that ladder, and we get in places where either we are sensitive to what's going on around us and preparing for that fight or flight mode, or we're actually being shut down, overwhelmed by all that and shut down. The first thing that I say is that's okay. I mean, that's the way God made us, and it's okay when you find yourself in those states. It's not so much being in the states, it's how you respond to them. It's getting stuck in those states where the problems occur. So just learn to be aware, learn to know what's going on. Talk to somebody who can help you find a good vocabulary to understand what's going on with you. And then find some places, some glimmers to help you put yourself back in a state where you hear God saying to you, peace be still. It's going to be okay. That's God's plan for you, and His desire for you is to do that. This has been a great conversation about polyvagal theory and about how God gives you the ability to do some co-regulation, some kind of putting yourself back in the right state. So thanks for being a part of this, and thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about that, you can go to the Branches website. You can look at some of the material that Branches makes available and help you to understand more about this. We appreciate you being a part of Extending Branches. Extending Branches is a twice-a-month podcast that's produced by Branches, and I'm going to see how many times I can say Branches in this paragraph. It's intended to help people find hope, experience healing, and enjoy growth in your life and your walk with God. If you'd like to know more about it, go to branches.org. We're going to start giving away $20 bills every time I say Branches on this. I'm just kidding. We're really not going to do that. We'd love for you, if you like the podcast, we'd love for you to share it, to like it, to do all those things you do with podcasts. You can find a plethora of information on the Branches website. We do things that we hope are inspirational and informational and entertaining. We do things like weekly Monday Matters, a daily Take a Minute, Make a Difference. We do blogs, all of that to help you to do a better job of being co-regulated and being the kind of person that God intends you to be. Jesus said, I am the vine and you're the branches. Our goal is to continue extending branches.